Some stories crawl out of the grave. Others are buried beneath ice and silence. From the bone-dry heart of the Australian outback to the snow-blind trails of Siberia, terror doesn't knock, it waits. Here, we tell the tales that stay with you long after the fire's gone out. Zombies, vanished hikers, unsolved deaths, end-of-the-world whispers that echo through time. This is Aussie After Dark, the place where the line between fact and fear disappears. So light a candle, lock the doors, and don't blink. Because the story you're about to hear might just be true. And if you can take a second to subscribe, it really motivates and helps to continue these stories. Well, anyway, let's join Mason once more. And then, bang! A sharp, cracking thunder. Danny jerked. For a heartbeat, he didn't react. He just blinked, confused. Then a small hole opened in the back of his skull. His eyes widened, mouth parting in a dumb, slack gasp. Blood ran from his nose like a faucet. He slumped forward, lifeless. Naya gasped as the weight lifted. Danny collapsed off her, face first into the blood-soaked concrete. Behind him stood Lily. The pistol in her small hands trembled. It was too big for her. The recoil had nearly knocked her off her feet. Jenny's sidearm. Smoke curled from the barrel. Her eyes were wide and hollow, her face streaked with soot and tears. Her whole body shook as she whispered, "He was gonna kill you." Naya didn't speak. She just stared at Lily. Both of them, silent, breathing like thunder. "You did right," I said, stepping into the smoke, eyes on them. My voice came from somewhere beneath the weight of it all. Around us, the battle still screamed. It wasn't a fight anymore. It was a massacre, a last stand. Steel screamed, blood boiled. Fire flickered along the warehouse rafters. The walls pulsed with muzzle flashes. Every second was a lifetime. Officer Tahi threw himself over Elspeth and her daughter as the side door burst open. 3 scavengers flooded in, automatic fire chewing through crates. Tahi roared, dragging them to the floor beneath a collapsed pallet. Rounds tore through his back. He didn't make a sound, just held them tighter, shielded them until his lungs stopped moving. The final shot punched through the back of his neck. Still, he never let go. Elspeth screamed, grabbed a fire axe from the wall, didn't hesitate. She buried it in the nearest scavenger's chest. The impact thudded like a mallet into wet wood. She tore it free, pivoted on blood-slick boots, and swung again. The second man didn't have time to scream. His face split like a melon, blood spraying across the metal crates. The third scavenger turned to flee. He made it 4 steps before Jenny shot him clean through the spine. He hit the ground twitching, boots kicking at nothing. Across the floor, Myers was cornered near the forklift, still bleeding from the neck, gun dry, breath shallow. He was reloading when a shadow dropped from above, a scavenger leaping from the catwalk, knife flashing. Myers let out a strangled gasp, staggered back, but he didn't fall. Blood ran down his neck in rivers, soaking into his vest. Myers grunted, face pale, eyes blazing. Then, he moved. With a growl, he grabbed the attacker's wrist with one hand, yanked the blade free in a spray of crimson, and slammed his sidearm up under the bastard's chin with the other. Bang! The scavenger's head snapped back, skull cracked wide open. Myers collapsed against the forklift, clutching the wound to his neck, breath ragged and wet, but still alive, still fighting. He jammed gauze into the wound, wrapped a belt tight around his neck like a tourniquet, and pulled himself upright. "Still got work to do," he spat, coughing blood. And then he kept moving, limping, bleeding, gun shaking in his hand, back into the firestorm. Halim was crouched behind an oil drum, bleeding from the gut, dragging himself with one hand. A scavenger spotted him, laughing, walking forward like it was sport. Halim didn't cry out. He reached into the scavenger's vest, yanked a live grenade from the man's belt, and pulled the pin. The scream was swallowed by the blast. When the smoke cleared, there were no bodies. Just red mist and shrapnel stuck in the walls like teeth. Travis was down, but not out. A bullet to the thigh left him limping. But he braced against a pillar, rifle balanced across a crate. He fired until the magazine clicked dry, then reloaded with shaking hands. 2 scavengers rushed him, one from the side, the other straight on. Travis dropped the first with a double tap to the chest. The second made it closer. Too close. They fought in silence. Guttural grunts. Travis took a punch to the ribs, felt something crack. He answered with a boot to the knee, heard it snap, and brought his elbow down across the scavenger's throat. Blood frothed from the man's lips. He crumpled. Travis sagged against the wall, bleeding from the gut now. "Still here," he muttered. Jenny moved like smoke through firelight. Every shot was placed, every movement deliberate. She ducked beneath scaffolding, came up behind 2 scavengers trying to flank Lily. 2 shots, both heads. They never saw her. One turned and fired wildly. The shot skimmed her shoulder, burned deep. She snarled, dropped to one knee, fired again. Bullet through the eye. Skull exploded against a support beam. Bone clattered to the floor. I was out of rounds. Didn't matter. I ripped a piece of twisted rebar from the concrete and waded into the fray. I caught one man in the jaw, felt it collapse under the impact. He dropped screaming. Another tackled me. We rolled. His knife slashed across my ribs. I headbutted him once, twice, 3 times, until my forehead ran red, and he stopped moving. My arms were shaking. My vision was blood-colored. But I kept swinging, because if I didn't, we died here. By the time Naya and Donnie's fight ended, by the time Lily pulled the trigger and dropped him cold, the battlefield was reduced to echoes and flame. Smoke slithered across the floor. Civilians cowered behind forklift wreckage. Blood dripped from the ceiling beams. The walls were slick with it. A few final scavengers tried to run. Jenny, eyes glassy, didn't even yell. She raised her rifle. 1 shot. 2. They fell face first into pools of their own making. The last scavenger stood near the loading bay, frozen, hands shaking, gun raised in surrender. Naya stood beside Lily now, face swollen, blood matted in her hair. She stared at the man. No words, just walked forward, lifted the bat. He whispered, "Please." She didn't stop. The bat came down. Once, twice, 3 times. By the 4th, there was nothing left to hit. The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was absence. The kind of silence that only comes after slaughter. We limped across the warehouse floor, dragging what was left of ourselves behind us. My boots left streaks of blood in every step, not all of it mine. The air was thick with smoke and ash, and every breath felt like swallowing glass. Somewhere behind us, a metal beam finally gave in and collapsed with a scream. Sparks danced in the dark like fireflies. The evac crates were empty. No maps, no communications, no soldiers. Just 2 broken shipping containers, torn open rations, and a shattered drone still buzzing weakly against the wall. Its lens blinked like a dying eye. "It was a trap," Jenny said quietly. Her voice was barely a whisper. Her hands were shaking. Blood soaked her sleeves and chin. Not hers. At least, not all of it. I looked at her, then at the others, and I nodded. But it's not the end. We had 3 vehicles left, scarred, bullet-riddled, like us. But they ran. That was all that mattered. There were 14 of us still breathing. Jenny, Travis, Myers, Naya, Elspeth and her daughter, Lily, myself, and 7 civilians, stunned, filthy, many of them crying, but somehow alive. Travis leaned against a scorched pillar, one leg stretched out uselessly, blood soaking through his jeans. He coughed, winced, but grinned through it. If there's a wall, he rasped, we go through it. Or burn it down. Myers sat nearby, his neck wound sealed with a cauterized blade and blind stubbornness. He hadn't said a word since the fighting stopped, just stared ahead like he was still in it, reliving every moment behind his eyes. Naya crouched next to Lily, gently now, carefully, like touching a shattered mirror. You saved me, she said, her voice. Lily didn't speak. Her eyes were distant, locked on something none of us could see. The pistol in her hands was too big for her fingers. Her grip hadn't loosened since she pulled the trigger. She just nodded. Outside the jagged hole in the warehouse gate, the city burned. What was left of Brisbane's skyline had crumbled beneath black smoke and twisted steel. The evacuation centers were ash. The government frequencies were silent. The air stank of rot and scorched plastic and the death of civilization. I looked back at the floor. So many bodies, some of them ours, some of them theirs. And honestly, in that moment, it was hard to tell the difference. The warehouse had become a graveyard with walls. Blood still dripped from the ceiling in places. A gas fire hissed in a far corner, lighting up a stack of old crates like a funeral pyre. Elspeth sat with her daughter cradled in her lap, humming some old lullaby between sobs. The child didn't cry, just stared. Another casualty in a war she didn't even understand. And me? I was just a man in a badge, soaked through with someone else's blood, staring at a convoy of ghosts. No more running, I said, barely recognizing my own voice. We drive. We survive this. For Halim. For Roland. For Tahi. For the ones who bought us this moment with their last breath. I turned to the others. Some looked up. Some didn't. But they were listening. Look for the smoke, I said. I glanced at Naya and at Lily sitting beside her. Lily didn't cry. She just stared ahead. A pistol in her lap. A childhood behind her. Look for the girl with the bat, I said. We are the line. Still. We didn't mourn. We didn't pray. There was no time for rituals anymore. Just oil in the engine, bullets in the mags, and a road heading south into the unknown. God help whatever meets us on the way. End transmission. Badge number 48216. Mason Rourke, Queensland Police.